Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
How you doing? No. Don't kill the bird, Mickey.
If you ever want to see the parrot again alive, you have to pass my infrastructure bill.
It sounds like the parrot is saying those things under coercion, Mickey. That doesn't sound like a parrot with agency. It sounds like a parrot with a knife at its throat.
Well, this is Joe Biden's negotiating tactic, Bob.
And is the parrot...
This is Joe Biden's negotiating tactic.
I get it. Okay, so is the parrot Republicans or is the parrot Joe Manchin? Or...
The parrot is the infrastructure deal that Biden allegedly just negotiated, and then 2 hours after he congratulated everybody on reaching this deal, he said, "Oh, by the way, I'm not going to sign this deal unless you also give me this other deal that I want that you don't want."
So, Mickey, we were just disconnected by a person I won't name while we were recording our priceless and truly spontaneous banter/repartee. And I think I had gotten in the question of, like, what does the parrot represent in your represents
the parrot represents the infrastructure package which Biden just negotiated, and he had an appearance where he said, "This is great. This shows what America can do. Consensus, blah blah blah." And then 2 hours later, he said, "Oh, by the way, I'm not signing this unless you give me this other huge bill that you don't want that I want." So what was this negotiation? He basically issued a veto threat. He said he wasn't going to sign it unless he got the other bill. And Pelosi said she's not going to consider it until they have already passed the other bill. So as we talk, this is in the process of falling apart. By the time we finish,
do you think that could be news about this on your phone? Is there any chance that it's a news flag?
No.
It could be falling apart, but here's my question. Why? I mean, Biden's not a fool, right? I mean, one theory is that this is all part of the plan. They wanted to get the Republicans to support it and then desert. Have you heard that theory?
No, but that's the way it's working out in the press, of course. The press is about to say the Republicans bail, when in fact it's pretty clear to me that the Democrats have provoked them. Well,
it depends on what you consider provocation.
Keep in mind the progressives never liked this deal. The basic grounding is the progressives don't like this deal because it basically gives all the moderates who might want to not vote for their big soft infrastructure bill, which is, daycare and community college. And
which Biden is saying he has to get through reconciliation or he won't sign the hard infrastructure roads and bridges bill.
Right, but if the moderates have in hand the bipartisan hard bill, that at least gives them something to run on. They could say, well, so we tank this soft bill, we at least have the hard bill. Pelosi wants them to say, if you don't vote with me on the soft bill, you have nothing.
So this puts pressure on the Manchins of the world, notably Manchin himself.
Not just the Manchins. In Pelosi has a margin of 4 in the House. She's got a lot of moderates in the House that probably might not go along with a massive dole to non-workers, okay? If she has 5 of them, then she's in deep trouble. So she wants to confront them with, if you tank this bill, you will go back and tell your constituents at election time, you accomplished nothing. You passed nothing. Okay? And, they don't want that. So they would rather have this hard infrastructure bill in hand. So the progressives want it to be all one big bill. They always have. And they succeeded in taking it by getting Biden to go out and make a veto threat. I mean, Biden showed, he looks incredibly weak. He showed he could stand up to the left for 2 hours. Okay? And then it was too much for him and he caved. So, I don't know. The press is obviously going to spin it the other way, but that's what it looks like to me.
Well, you're assuming that he didn't know he was going to do this in advance. Are you so sure? I mean, it does seem surprising that he would agree to the deal and without having cleared it with Pelosi. So you're saying he didn't clear this with Pelosi. So in other words, let me be clear. By this, I mean this deal where they get a kind of a modest, hard infrastructure bill that these moderate Republicans support. So they can pass that in a bipartisan way. And then the plan is to go get the soft infrastructure through reconciliation, human infrastructure, they call it, through reconciliation with Democrats only. And you're saying he didn't clear this plan with Pelosi, and it was only after he announced the deal that she said, "Oh, by the way, Joe, I'm only with you if you guarantee that you will veto the hard infrastructure unless you also get the reconciliation, soft infrastructure." That seems weird that they would not have discussed this.
It seems implausible and incompetent, but that's what it looks like. On the other hand, a point in your favor is at the end of the first press conference, he said, "And I'll be back to speak with you shortly."
Yeah.
So he obviously was planning a second press conference all along. So that would go with your conspiracy theory, that's not a conspiracy theory. It's sort of the obvious competence theory that it was a stage.
Well, somebody has written it. This all a pundit guy.
Ambush.
What's that?
It was sort of like an ambush, a stage double cross.
Well, did you see this all a pundit piece about
No,
this?
I didn't.
Yeah, no, that's his theory. He's saying, look, it's totally great for them if the Republicans now abandon this and he's in a position to push through the whole big enchilada, the two things combined through reconciliation. Now, I don't understand exactly how doing this ensures that he can now get the bill in combined form through with Democrats only, but that's the kabuki theory.
Well, obviously, Pelosi isn't confident in her ability to pass the soft part, the liberal welfare state part by itself, because otherwise she wouldn't want to also mix in the hard part, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that implies some weakness in her position, A. And B, remember, it's not a question of just passing or not passing. It's a question of what you pass. In other words, suppose they pass a big soft infrastructure package, but they cut out the payments to non-workers and just go back to the increasing the payments to workers, okay? Tax payments to workers. That's a huge difference between those two bills. I'm happy with the second bill. I hate the first bill, okay? A lot of, you could call them both soft infrastructure, and you can, so it's a negotiation over what the bill would look like and what they throw overboard and what they don't throw overboard. And this strengthens Pelosi's hand.
That makes sense.
To get the things that she really wants that are, of course, the most controversial things, or else they wouldn't be so important. It actually is a pretty smart strategy, except I can't believe the Republicans are completely unable to fight back, and the public likes bipartisanship. So, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't.
Now, here's my question. Did he, if the goal is to put pressure on these moderates as they negotiate the human infrastructure bill, did they have to make the threat publicly to make that credible? Could they not have they couldn't have just said to Joe Manchin and a few people in the House, look, I'm not going to sign the one you want unless you give us what we want on human infrastructure. Or is the thinking that he had to make the threat publicly to make it credible to them so that they know he couldn't back down?
Public threats are always more credible. So
sure,
I think that.
But sometimes private ones work. And is the thinking that that's why he had, because obviously if they could have, if he could have just made it privately, there are two possibilities. One is it never gets back to Republicans. That's probably unlikely. But the other possibility is, okay, the Republicans do find out what's going on, but at least because it's not a public threat, they don't feel like they've been publicly humiliated and that they have to start screaming about it, which is what they've wound up doing, right?
Or they might feel that, this is a hollow threat, and when we call Biden's bluff, he's going to sign it. If the only thing on his desk is this hard bill that he's just negotiated, is he really going to veto it? I don't think so. They might think, well, or they might think, well, we can kick up a fuss later when it comes time to when it comes time to actually vote on the bill, if he actually tries to delay the vote to pass this other bill, then we can kick up a fuss then. But keep in mind, if it's not just Manchin, he has to get the message to 40 moderate Democrats in the House, okay? The chances that it won't leak are very, very slim.
I suppose that's true. But again, it could be that that the Republicans could live with the leaked version. They just don't want to be publicly humiliated the way they feel, right? Yeah. Or if I don't know if humiliation's the word, but maybe it would be easier for them to live in the knowledge that this is hanging over them if Biden hadn't made a big deal of it.
I guess that's right.
So what's going to happen now? Is the whole thing going to fall apart like
in general,
right now?
I would not rule out incompetence. I mean, we don't know what's going on inside the Biden White House. There are 5 guys who are running it. And, they're having a fight over this. And, one of them, Biden is not maybe the world's most decisive person. So maybe he decides one way and then 2 hours later,
and that may be a
back.
polite way of putting what some people would say the cognitive problem is here. But so
I don't sense that he's not capable of making the decision, but, people oftentimes go back and forth. So I wouldn't necessarily agree to the
Do you think the Biden of 10 years, if you're right and this is a mistake, do you think the Biden of 10 years ago makes this mistake? I don't.
I guess. And, I guess I don't.
Because I only see it happening, given how much he understands about the Senate and that he does have a good pragmatic intelligence. I only see it happening if he's become hostage to warring advisors right. And that would not have happened 10 years ago.
Right. It's a decision. It's a sort of back and forth that Trump would make and we knew who the warring advisors were.
Yeah. Oh, that White House was
Maggie Haberman told us, but there's no Maggie Haberman for this administration. So, we don't know about the warring advisors. But yeah, anyway, I think it's very embarrassing to Biden. The mainstream media isn't going to let that story out. So you may be right in terms of the consequences.
Is it going to fall apart like today, all of it, or what?
Yes.
It is, you think? The whole thing?
Well, Ryan Lizza tweeted that about 3 hours ago that this whole thing may fall apart today. So Lizza is being the honest reporter here. All the Democrats are sort of rationalizing, well, everybody knew they were linked. Yeah, but they didn't know he was going to make a veto threat. And, Lizza is pointing that out. And, there's a difference between going on 2 tracks where nobody knows what's going to happen and specifically making a veto threat and linking them. And Lizza, even though he's a liberal, is pointing that out to his credit. So
you predict kablooey. That's the official Mickey prediction.
No, I just think it might. I would predict that it would be semi-kablooey, that they would have grave doubts and let it hang over the weekend. But
and by the way, why isn't there a Maggie Haberman for this administration? Just because they don't leak the way the Trump administration leaked?
They're not covering their ass just in case they want to post-Trump.
Well, if
career.
they have that much discipline,
Jared was a huge leaker, so it's like the leaking came from the top.
Hey, by the way, did you read that David Ignatius column suggesting that do you remember this whole thing in Jordan where the king arrested quasi-arrested his half-brother and some other people?
Vaguely.
David Ignatius wrote this column suggesting that this was a kind of budding coup and that it was instigated, as I read him, in part by Jared and Trump. I mean, it was like, it's a fascinating case. I mean, you have to read between the lines a little, but Ignatius definitely has them playing a role, and it has to do with them wanting to get Saudi Arabia to sign on to the Abraham Accords. And Saudi Arabia, I guess, would only do that if they gained some influence over, like, the control of the Al-Aqsa Mosque or something at the expense of Jordan, and Jordan's king wouldn't play along, and they thought, well, maybe if we had a different king. I don't know. It's maybe I'm getting it a little wrong, but he's definitely suggesting that Trump and Kushner had something to do with this instability in Jordan.
So Trump and Kushner were fomenting the instability. They weren't telling the king to arrest his brother.
No. The idea is, as I read it, they were behind the instability whose solution was the arrest of the brother.
So why didn't the king of Jordan then hate Trump and Kushner?
Well, he probably does. He can't say it out loud.
Yeah, but didn't he have to go along with the Abraham Accords? Maybe not.
Well, Jordan, Jordan didn't. I don't think Jordan signed on. I mean, Jordan already is fundamentally at peace with Israel, right? I mean,
right.
We'd already bought them off, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So there are a couple of other interesting developments. First, a minor technical note, if what they negotiated for the hard infrastructure is the deal, can they then incorporate all sorts of things that they left on the table into the soft bill? In other words, they were going to finance that by corporate tax hikes, okay? The Democrats. That didn't happen. So can Pelosi now use corporate tax hikes to finance the soft deal? There was a huge, I guess so. There was a huge, part of the hard deal, bizarrely, was, something that was so important to them that they put it in the hard deal, which is, increasing the pay of in-home health care for the elderly, which is a huge boon to the unions who do that, and it sort of steered America into in-home health care of the elderly as opposed to nursing home care in facilities. And that was in the hard bill, and that wasn't in the final deal. So could Pelosi then incorporate that part, which obviously is very important, or else they wouldn't have included it, into her soft deal? I think she can. So
Interesting question.
She can do whatever they want.
So let me be clear. The Biden's anticipated sequencing is we pass hard infrastructure in a bipartisan way. Then I don't sign the bill. Then we immediately move to pass the other thing through reconciliation with Democrats only. Then I sign them both.
Well, then they have to go to the House, and Pelosi would consider their, then it does, if they both pass the Senate, it doesn't matter what order she considers them in. But
he's got to get the first one done so that the Republicans can't go back on it once they see what's in the human infrastructure.
Well, they have to vote it again. The whole thing, if Pelosi makes any changes, they both have to vote for it again. So, they have a chance to regress. The whole question, it begs the question, I'm sure I'm misusing that. It begs the question of why did they have two separate bills if they're going to treat them as one bill? Why not just propose one big bill? It makes no sense other than that,
well,
either they must have had some different strategy in mind, or else they're incredibly Machiavellian.
Well, one answer is Manchin insisted on being able to say he had been bipartisan, and you can only do that with the first bill.
That's a good point. So it's all a kabuki to let Manchin claim he's bipartisan. I can't believe even Manchin is that shallow. But,
come on. I mean, nothing personal, but he is a politician.
The thing, as you know, the thing I care about are these cash payments to build as child tax credits to non-working low-income parents, which recreates the welfare system.
Oh, I didn't realize you had an opinion on that part of it.
But there have been first, if Pelosi takes that out of the bill, so if the moderates win in the House and that disappears from the bill,
there will be rejoicing in Beverly Hills.
I don't really care about the rest of the package. Sure, go ahead, spend $2 trillion. So, what happens within the package is just as important as whether the package gets voted up or down. Second, there have been some developments in that, which is, Marco Rubio and Mike Lee were the alleged leaders of the movement against this tax credit. They wanted to raise the existing tax credit, which only goes to workers, but cut it off before it went to non-workers. But they'd been awfully quiet about it. In fact, Lee gave a whole speech against it on the floor that never mentioned work. It was totally bizarre. Then Tom Cotton went on John Ellis's podcast and came out strongly against this provision, and saying it's like recreating welfare, it's a bad idea. And then a few days later, Rubio came out with a strong statement, which wasn't a contradictory statement. I mean, it was his position all along, but he hadn't exactly shouted it from the rooftop.
So he was playing Me Too with Tom Cotton, anticipating the presidential election?
That would be the speculation, that he didn't want Cotton to steal the issue. But what do I know? That's just circumstantial. The point is that I love Rubio now. Rubio, as you know, I've always loved Marco Rubio. What a great guy. He did the thing he had to do, and if he keeps it up, that'd be great. And there was wailing and gnashing of teeth among the Niskanen Center, hey, let's give cash to non-working mothers crowd, who had sort of infiltrated Rubio, but they seem to have lost. Mm-hmm. I don't want to gloat, because victory is temporary, but and even if Rubio comes out against it, they need a Democrat. They need to convince Manchin, and I don't think they've convinced Manchin, so or Sinema or somebody not to go along with it. So but it's a development. There is now actual Republican high voltage opposition to this child tax credit.
So you're happy.
I'm happy about that.
The bad news is the Republicans are going to have no say over whether it passes unless this whole thing goes kablooey, in which case, well, no, if it goes kablooey, they have
it's reconciliation. If they have say on it. If any Republicans join the Democrats, then they're totally fucked. But no, they have to convince a Democrat. But like I say, it seems to me they have more chance convincing Democrats in the House than Manchin and Sinema. Manchin and Sinema are two people who really need the Democratic Party at some point. Moderates in the House, they're like 40 or 50 people they might appeal to. They only need 5 of them. They're running for re-election every year. This could be used against them in a race, which I don't think Sinema faces a race this year. So, or Manchin for that matter. So they have leverage over these moderates in the House that they don't in the Senate. But Rubio shouting it from the rooftops influences the House too. So that's where the effect would come.
Now, do you think enough time has passed since this thing started to seem to fall apart that by now the New York Times has a headline worth checking? Should I check?
Sure, go ahead.
Because it was still in Twitter mode when I last checked.
It's going to say Republicans.
Wait, Derek Chauvin was sentenced to over 22 years. That's breaking news.
Yeah. Well, that happened before we went on the air.
Oh, did it? Well, anyway, no, it doesn't seem to. That's pretty pathetic. They've had time to do something. Let's see if the Washington Post is a little more on its toes here.
Go to Ryan Litz's Twitter feed, but go to the Washington Post first. No,
I'm not. Twitter's too distracting. So, what else is going on this week?
So, just to finish up the congressional part of it. There's this sense you get, you want to see stories happening over the horizon. Mm-hmm. Well, the one that's developing is Democrats, it all falling apart for the Democrats. They realize, oh my God, we elected Biden, we had high hopes, but it's all falling apart. But we can't say that. It's way too early to say that. But keep an eye on that story.
That's what you're hoping.
The Democratic implosion.
That's your hope.
Necessarily. No, I want infrastructure. I want everything.
No, but you would rather have nothing at all if that's the way you got, your way on the child tax credit.
Yes.
You would. So you're a nihilist. You're going on record as saying you're a nihilist. You'd rather the universe implode. You would rather planet Earth blow up.
The planet Earth doesn't blow up if we don't have an infrastructure package.
No, I know, but just as a thought experiment, you would rather see the human species extinguished than to see the child tax credit passed. Am I?
No, on balance, I would rather see the human species survive.
Okay, so I have fairly paraphrased your position.
But I don't want the long-term development of a socially dysfunctional underclass, and it's not going to be the socially dysfunctional underclass everybody was talking about in the 90s when Clinton reformed welfare. It's going to be much, much larger.
Wait, what about this thought experiment?
No, I don't want that.
What about this thought experiment? Suppose they don't do the child tax credit, but they take the money they saved and use it to airlift Central American low-income Central Americans into America to take the jobs.
They're already doing that. They're opening every door. They're going to eliminate. It came out yesterday that they're going to eliminate this public health rule that allows them to keep, hundreds of thousands of people out. They're going to get rid of that, and they're changing the grounds for asylum so that if you claim that you're a victim of a culture of machismo, you can come in. So they're basically opening the floodgates. So they can't do anything more, really.
That's an interesting line.
Doing.
If you claim that you're a victim of the culture of machismo.
It's like divorce in Massachusetts. When I was a Tyro law student, this was the beginning and end of my legal career, I had an uncontested divorce.
Yeah.
And I almost lost it because the divorce laws in Massachusetts were very retrograde at the time, and you had to prove physical harm. You couldn't just say, we don't like each other, we're getting divorced. You had to prove that one party physically beat the other. So I put my client on the stand. I didn't ask her name or anything. I just said, well, did he hit you? Like the judge said, counsel, you've forgotten to lay the groundwork for this.
Wait, you were in an actual court of law, practicing law?
Yeah, I was in the Legal Aid Society.
That's scary.
It was very scary.
No, in a different way, though.
They let students do that. But anyway, I was terrible at it. But the point is, you had to prove they hit you, but it was all a pretext. Everybody agreed that, you pretended that somebody hit you to get in. So in order to say you have to be a victim of a culture of machismo and have suffered some physical fear.
No,
okay?
I seized on the phrase because I was wondering how much trouble it could get you into. Because it seems to me, I mean, you could be taken as saying that Latin American culture is a culture of male violence.
No, but first, the phrase is actually in the ruling. So
it's in what ruling?
It's in the ruling of some sort of immigration judge loosening the standards for asylum that Sessions then overturned, and then Biden is re-overturning it. And are you claiming that Latin America doesn't have a culture of machismo, Bob?
I have no comments on anything's relevant to the border, except that Kamala's going there, so she'll probably straighten it out. Why don't we talk about the NCAA? Talk about court rulings. That's kind of interesting, right?
I didn't follow that one. What's that about?
Well, there's been this, long-standing argument that college athletes get exploited because these colleges make a ton of money. The big-time sports colleges make a ton of money on their football and basketball programs, but conveniently they're prohibited from actually paying the athletes who get who are responsible for the big TV contracts and all the attendance and everything. And so there's been this argument that no, you should pay these guys like pros, and the Supreme Court.
What were the grounds? What statute did the NCAA violate? What grounds were? Yes, obviously on the equities, the court is right, but what was the basis for?
I think it might be an antitrust argument. Let me give you a quote from Brett Kavanaugh, which is actually pretty interesting. He wrote a concurring opinion, and he wrote, "Nowhere else in America can businesses get away with agreeing not to pay their workers a fair market rate on the theory that their product is defined by not paying their workers a fair market rate." What's interesting about that, I think he's right. Nobody makes that argument but the NCAA, but it may be an accurate characterization of the situation. I mean, there is a question of whether the appeal of college sports persists once the illusion that these are like students is totally burst.
That's a very good point. And my line is that Brett Kavanaugh never worked for the Washington Monthly because,
what does that mean?
He paid, I don't know, when I went to work for them in 78, he paid $8,400 a year, okay?
Sure, but he didn't
even
claim,
1980.
But Mickey, he didn't claim that if he paid you more, people wouldn't want to read the magazine. That's what the NCAA is saying.
I think obviously, but part of the appeal of the magazine, it was done as a labor of love by these young tyros. But doesn't Kavanaugh's argument apply to the whole edifice of scholarship, which rests on exploiting the labor of junior untenured faculty and graduate students and teaching assistants?
Again, students don't go to Ivy League schools because they're under the illusion that these assistant professors are in it for the love of the game.
Okay.
They don't care how much you pay them. It's only college sport. And it's a serious question because, I mean, I think, the sophisticated sports viewer has long abandoned the idea that these are just, typical students who showed up and, hey, they kind of like football, so they thought they'd go out for the team and so on. At the same time,
sometimes that's true.
It happens, but it doesn't happen that much at the big time colleges. At the same time, if it becomes known that somebody's, this kid is making $800,000 a year. And by the way, the ruling does not open the way for that yet. It's an incremental ruling that I think says that costs kind of directly related to going to school, income needs that they have by virtue of going to school or something. In the near term, there's a cap on what this could lead to, as I understand it. But still, some people think it's the camel's nose under the tent. Right. And if you imagine, these guys making $1 million, $2 million, part of the appeal of college sports has something to do with how different it is from pro sports.
I agree.
There's no doubt about that.
And if you go to a college game, it feels different, and it's great.
Mm-hmm.
It feels, I remember some of the championship UCLA teams had guys who functioned perfectly well on the team, like Fred Slaughter, the center, and Keith Erickson, who was a good outside shooter. They didn't really have much of a future in the NBA.
Most don't. Yeah,
they were, but they were part of an NCAA championship team. So,
right.
It did have that flavor. There were some guys who were just along for the fun.
Now, part of that would persist because part of the appeal is like, this is it for these guys, like this is their senior year. It's now or never. That is part of the drama of college sports, and that would persist. Oddly, actually, you might see one thing that might flip. One thing you've seen more and more is the one and done thing in basketball, especially. These guys just go there for their freshman year, and they're so good that they can go straight to the NBA, and the coaches know it.
Well, why would they do that if they can make $1 million a year?
That's what I'm saying.
College?
That's what I'm saying. This could change that and maybe lead the superstars to hang around a little longer. Although if they're true superstars, they can probably always make money.
Or they may
NBA.
just all say, "Fuck it, now it's just a matter of money. I don't want it. Yeah. This education thing is a fraud." And they all go right to the NBA, but of course they all can't get into the NBA. So the colleges just become a minor league sort of thing.
But one question is exploitation a fair word to apply to what happens now? I think with some of them, it is. I mean, especially when the athletic programs are kind of complicit in abandoning any pretense of them getting an education. They steer them to these courses where they know that the professors are football fans and will let them never show up to class and stuff. And, that doesn't seem cool.
Was it Mike Lee, the guard on the Bill Walton championship team who fed Walton all those balls that he dunked?
At UCLA?
Was actually a top poli-sci student.
You know who played basketball at UCLA supposedly? Dennis Ross.
Dennis Ross,
the Middle East guy. He was a U.S. negotiator in the Middle East for a long time. Supposedly, it's hard to pin down on the internet, but it is said. It is
hard to believe this could be verified. It's hard to believe he started.
It is hard to believe, although those were different days. I mean, you remember the New York Knicks of 1970? How many of those guys could play today? Different times.
The Bruins at the time that Dennis Ross grew up were pretty good. Starting in 1965, they were pretty good.
Well, that was Alcindor, or as he later came to call him, Kareem.
Well, you're so wrong.
Kareem was late 60s.
It started with the fast break teams when there was a cover of Sports Illustrated with Art Heyman leads the rout of the big man. The rout of the big man. The big men were losing because UCLA had pioneered this fast break 2-minute explosion offense that basically won games even if you had all small men. Okay. Then they got so good that they managed to attract Alcindor, and then that was the end of the fast break. Then they had a big man offense. But they had 3 or 4 championship years or near championship years just on the fast break small man offense.
And that was a John Wooden team?
That was a John Wooden team, yeah. It was incredibly exciting. Those were the years when I played basketball, Bob.
Did you play in high school?
I played JV. I didn't make the varsity, but we played the fast break, John. We were all imitating John Wooden. It's a great way to play basketball. I lament the fact that it has disappeared.
You know who later played at the high school where I played as a freshman? I've told you this, but do you remember? Trivia test.
Shaquille O'Neal.
Correct.
Really? I got that right?
Yeah.
Okay. What high school was that?
Robert G. Cole High School in Fort Sam, Houston. We're both Army brats. I was only there as a freshman. I did play JV ball. And as I later put it to him, and I swear this is an actual true fact, I later said to Shaq, in person, so I paved the way for you.
And he grunted or something in response, right?
A grunt would be a charitable characterization of his degree of interest in what I was saying at the time. I encountered him in a hotel lobby in Chicago. Yeah. Turns out he's not as fascinated by our intertwined histories as I am. So, what else is going on in the world?
There was a mayoral election in New York that we're not going to find out who won until July. And I don't quite, it was done by ranked choice voting. Mm-hmm. And this has to be this has to be the test case that like soured people on ranked choice voting. Because, I mean, the press doesn't know what to do. It's rendered worse by New York's crazy laws where first they have to wait 10 days for all the absentee ballots to come in. Mm-hmm. So they can't even eliminate any candidates for 10 days, right? And then there's this laborious process where they count and recount, and the whole system is designed to elect somebody like Garcia, who is sort of like this everybody's second choice, and she won Manhattan, but she lost the popular plurality to this ex-cop, and but everybody has to pretend that the ex-cop is ahead when he might not be ahead. Who knows? And there is, as you know, is it common knowledge that there is no? It's been proven mathematically that there is no accurate way to vote. Everybody knows that, right?
Wait, what? That there's no accurate way to vote?
Yeah, an economist a Nobel-winning economist named Kenneth Arrow wrote a little paper called "The Uncertainty" on the uncertainty hypothesis, where he proved that there's no actual way to aggregate votes so that it actually every system has flaws. There's no perfect system.
Well, I'm not sure how you would define the ideal that they fall short of, but
well,
anyway.
He did.
Okay.
With rigor, I'm sure, although I forget what it was.
Okay.
But with ranked choice voting, the problem is that somebody can be everybody's number two. Okay, on every ballot, everybody puts Robert Wright as number two. You're the first to be eliminated, even though you really should be the mayor of New York because you didn't win any votes. So mm-hmm. you get. So there are a couple of jurisdictions that have eliminated ranked choice voting precisely because they had this problem. So this whole thing seems to me like an edifice ready to collapse. But
now is ranked choice voting the thing that our friend the great Rick Hertzberg has been obsessed with for most of his life? Correct.
Although there's also approval voting. He may have been, which is slightly different. You say, is Bob Wright acceptable or not? Well, I don't know all the intricacies, but yes, I believe that's
RCV
true.
was supposed to solve some problem afflicting America or Democrats or something, but I now forget what the problem was. What problem is it supposed to solve? Do you know?
I guess it solves the problem of.
I mean, it avoids a runoff for one thing.
A guy winning the mayoralty with 26% of the vote, when there's a much more widely acceptable candidate who gets 25% of the vote. I mean, it solves that problem. But The point Glenn Greenwald made is very important here, which is, everybody's distrustful of elections. Okay. Well, one way to eliminate distrust is to give the results quickly so there's no time to finagle them and massage them. Okay. This is the opposite. It's giving people a month to if you're paranoid, to fuck around with the totals.
I mean, that's
so
not
it's
quite,
insane.
That's not
Absolutely
quite
insane.
Inherent in the system. I mean, they could, with ordinary elections, choose to wait for all the absentee votes to come in before they show you anything, which is what they're doing here. I mean, it's true that the reason I think they're doing it here is because in principle, you could have more dramatic last-minute reversals after you count the absentee votes than you can have with conventional voting, right? It's like when you're adding conventional votes, everything you're saying you know to be true and solid. At least this many people have voted for this candidate. At least this many people have voted for this candidate. With ranked choice, that's not
maybe
so
you're right.
true.
It's really the absentee thing that's screwing everything up.
Totally. The computers could give us
computers could do it right now. Could do this in 10 minutes. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
And you know, you could just, it's really not necessary. They could give us provisional results and everybody understands that maybe if it's close enough, you could see a wild swing, you know, with absentee ballots. But, you know, that's always the case. Even with a regular election, it could be so close that absentee votes will flip it. Maybe. So I don't quite see why they don't just gratify us and give us the damn results today.
That's a very good point. The second good point you made today.
What was the first? We're both too old to remember, but I'll take your word for it.
The point about how college basketball will lose its allure once.
Oh, that's not very profound, believe me. I don't think that's original.
It took me a while to grok it, so what the hell? That's my definition of profundity.
Okay.
What else we got? We got Merrick Garland hilariously was denounced by Jennifer Rubin as not the man for the job after she said he was the man for a job because he wasn't bringing voting rights cases, and then he brought a voting rights case today against Georgia, and it's you know, he's charging the Georgia changes, which are not much. I mean, you know, ID requirements for absentee ballots, fewer drop boxes.
So these are changes in Georgia state legislation?
Right. That's passed, and he's saying it's unconstitutional. And he's saying...
Wait, he's opining that? I mean, he's just the AG.
No, he filed a lawsuit. He filed a lawsuit.
Okay.
But he filed a lawsuit saying that they have an intent to discriminate, to suppress the vote of blacks. I'm always hostile to intent tests because you could have an intent, you know, you could support driver's license laws because you thought it was going to hurt blacks. Okay. Who knows what crazy racists think. Okay. That shouldn't invalidate driver's license laws if there's a valid purpose. So, I just don't think intent should be part of it. On the other hand, effect shouldn't be part of it either. It should be some weighing of the purpose versus the effect. And they had to file it on intent because there's a court case before the Supreme Court right now that may throw out say you can't file it on the basis of effect or restrict it. Mm-hmm. So it's all very complicated. If you read Rick Hazen's blog, you will be up to date on why he filed it on the basis of intent. Bogus as that seems to me. I mean, it only seems bogus to me. Everybody else says, well, if they meant to discriminate against blacks, then it should be thrown out. No, you have to look at what the law did, not what they intended to do. They could be idiots. So you could impose a perfectly reasonable ID requirement, and it shouldn't be struck down just because somebody intended it. You know, some asshole intended it to hurt blacks. I mean, and how would you prove that anyway? So
this will be decided in the courts. And meanwhile, the federal voting rights legislation, which at this point is what, if anything, could lead to filibuster reform, this would be it, right?
No, because that's what the Democrats thought it would, but they're trying to gin up outrage over the Republicans' failure to Republican filibustering this bill. There's no outrage. It was a one-day story.
No, but I thought
the outrage has not materialized.
Right. No, I thought the plan was now to come up with a more modest bill that Joe Manchin could get behind big time, and so he would be willing to help them with filibuster reform. That's now dead?
No, that's not dead. That's their plan, but the emotional charge that was supposed to be behind it just doesn't seem to be there. So, you know, the Democrats, it didn't help that the Democrats flipped on voter ID, saying, okay, now voter ID is okay. Of course, the next day, Merrick Garland files a suit attacking Georgia for imposing voter ID. So he's sort of out of step with the rest of his party. I just don't, the Democrats have a fallback and that's it. I just don't see the oomph behind it that's going to lead, even if, they get Manchin's vote, that it's going to lead Manchin, Sinema, and the 3 or 4 other senators who secretly hate getting rid of the filibuster, going to lead them to change their minds. But they might, one of those is Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona, who was caught on a call with donors saying, yeah, maybe we'll have some restrictions on the filibuster, require them to go and talk, require a talking filibuster. So that sort of thing might happen. But I just don't, I think that Democratic plan has fizzled. I've been wrong before.
True.
But that's that.
So what do you think?
We could talk about critical race theory again, although I'm woefully
CRT,
uninformed.
Baby. What's the news on CRT?
Well,
here's my question. I have a question about CRT. Does the amount of time conservatives spend talking about it at this point bear any relationship to how much CRT teaching is actually going on? In other words, suppose you magically got in colleges and high schools and prep schools, wherever else maybe it's being in some sense taught. Suppose the amount of teaching were reduced overnight by 95%. Would that, wouldn't the conservatives keep going on about it? They're just invested in it, right?
Yeah, I guess if you want to summarize the developments, it obviously is an incredible fundraiser for conservatives and polls incredibly well because they keep hitting it hard. So that's going to happen. And I think there's a backlash against trying to regulate it because it tends to violate free speech and academic freedom, and you're supposed to be open to all points of view, so why can't you be open to critical race theory? That guy, Thomas Chatterton
Williams,
thank you, Bob, is very strong on that point. He's no friend of critical race theory, but he opposes these attempts to regulate it. And yes, but I think it was spreading like wildfire, and unless somebody opposes it, it's going to keep spreading like wildfire. The analogy is to critical legal studies, which was considered sort of a crazy legal offshoot, but is now infiltrated most law schools. And as everybody seems to agree, they've contributed. Some of my best friends are crits, but that's graduate school, not elementary school.
What does critical legal theory hold?
Oh, it's sort of the answer is I don't quite know, but it's sort of like, the law is a fraud. It basically is imposing rules that enable the ruling class to stay the ruling class.
Well,
which I'm open to, yes. So,
so what did you think the law was for?
No, that's right. But anyway,
but that's not Derek Bell, right? Derek Bell, although a lawyer, is CRT, but not CLT.
He may be CLT too, but he's CRT.
He's one of the founding CRT.
It's weird. For our next project, our last project was watching the movie Network, which I've now done, so we can talk about that
in the Parrot Room.
But Matt Iglesias says that there's a brilliant, I think, short science fiction story by Derek Bell that encapsulates what's good about CRT, so we should read that.
Wow. I didn't know. Reading seems like pretty tough duty.
It's called Space Traders. Watching Network was tough duty, man. Don't get me started. But Space Traders, it's called Space Traders, I think.
Space Traitors or
Traders?
Space Traders.
I'll find it for you anyway.
Well, Glenn Lowry
especially if it's a short story.
Glenn Lowry provided a somewhat charitable characterization of Derek Bell's. I think it was in his conversation with James Lindsay when he was arguing that, of course, he's not disposed to like CRT, but he said, you put yourself in Derek Bell's shoes and it kind of makes sense. Yeah. Anyway, Space Traders.
I started to listen to his conversation with Charles Murray.
Oh, wait, is that up already?
Oh, yeah. It's been up for a couple of days.
Behind his paywall, or, they spend time behind his paywall before they go public?
Oh, I didn't
I don't
spend
think
any
it's
time
public. I
behind
don't
the
think it's
paywall.
public yet. I think it's about to go public.
I just looked at it this morning. What are you talking about?
Oh, and you're not a paying patron?
No, it's on
you know what?
Blog
You know what? Yeah, but that may, if it was on YouTube, did you see it on YouTube?
Yeah, they were like two long excerpts, each about 15 minutes.
So those are the excerpts. The whole conversation
So what
is
more do
not
I
yet.
want to watch?
I don't know. It's up to you, but many people pay.
The first question was, so Charles, do you think blacks are inferior? That seemed to get right to the point.
Glenn doesn't beat around the bush.
So, it seemed like a really valuable conversation, but even on fast forward, I didn't finish it in time. So we should talk about it at some point.
Major diss from Mickey.
Well,
Major Charles Murray diss.
No, I only started. No, I would have gladly listened to it. I only started 5 minutes before, and it was a 10-minute thing.
I see.
But we should for the future, we should definitely talk about that.
I will listen to that
seemed very
at
important.
some point. So what about this Britney Spears thing?
Well, the contrarian point of view, which nobody dares state, but it's an obvious possibility, is that she's batshit crazy. And everybody's treating her as, well, how could she do her job performing if she was batshit crazy? And the answer is, of course she could. But
does she perform ably? Is she
I
still
don't know.
out there on the concert circuit?
Yeah, she has a residency in Las Vegas, I think. So how bad could she be?
A residency? Meaning she's at a particular club and plays?
Every fucking day or every fucking week or something, yeah. So
at a casino or something.
Well, the clubs and casinos are next door to each other.
Right.
So, yeah. I think, obviously I'm sympathetic to it. It looks like she's being ruthlessly exploited by a variety of people, but how did it get to this stage where this was?
Well, she obviously had, an out of control period. I think we all remember the tabloid stuff but
I actually don't remember that. I remember her marrying this guy, Kevin Federline, and that's all I tuned out after that.
Well, I couldn't have even remembered that name, but I vaguely remember a tabloid phase. But but still, conservatorship, when you think about it, is a pretty weird institution. The idea that somebody her age, some judge says, sorry, you don't get to control your assets, and your father does. And it's like, why my father? I mean, they were virtually estranged, I think. What's so magic about the relationship of a father to a daughter he's not even on speaking terms with, that he gets to control everything? That seems kind of weird.
Lindsay Lohan, you're next.
Well, it was very Lindsay Lohan-ish, the Britney dissolution phase. Yes, I almost get them mixed up. Maybe I am getting them mixed up, but
I don't think so.
But no, seriously, it's a weird thing. Some judge can say, I don't know. I mean, there better be, pretty undeniable evidence of her out of controlness, and I'm not sure there is anymore.
Right. No.
So I'm on Team Lindsay, man. I'm on Team Britney.
So am I. I just think that if she were crazy, the press is so much on her team that it would destroy the story. They wouldn't.
Oh, is the press clearly on her team?
Well, I think so, but it may just be because the facts are on her side.
Well, then I'm on Team Dad. Put me on Team Dad.
I'm for ruthlessly exploitative, show business parents. There's a couple of Ron DeSantis. DeSantis is obviously the heir apparent at the moment to Trump. I mean, of the Trumpists. I mean, I'm glad Rubio did his thing, and he's a very talented politician. He may get somewhere, but it won't be by adopting the mantle of the Trumpists. DeSantis is the guy who could steal them and expand them. And he actually won a straw poll against Trump, which is has to send Trump into orbit in terms of resentment. And
Trump won't be able to control himself on that, right? I mean, we will be hearing from Trump about DeSantis.
Right. Well, and this is a point that somebody made. I forget who about the reconciliation bill. He isn't going to stay out of that either. Okay. He may wade in and say this is a terrible bill, Mitch McConnell. You should, all these Republican senators should be ashamed. And then it could fall apart for that reason, or he could say, I'm for it. I mean, he's a ninth planet out there exerting gravitational force.
And he is now emerging from
everybody's-
hibernation, right? He's about
Right.
to start giving more and more talks and everything. I mean, we're about to
Well,
start
he's been
hearing from
trying, but he hasn't made that much impact. But yes, we think that's going to happen. So we would like to push him out of our consciousness, but he's still there. And at the end of Network, this movie, which we'll talk about in the Parrot Room, there's a scene where they say, what do we do about this guy Howard Beale? We'd really like to get rid of him.
No plot spoilers.
And you can imagine that same conversation happening in the Republican Party. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, you can't imagine the same solution, I think. We can agree.
You can imagine it, but let's hope it doesn't happen.
I think it's safe to say you can't imagine it happening the way it happened. Anyway.
No, you can't imagine it happening the way it happened. You can imagine it happening.
Yeah, but not it being decided upon at a meeting at the the RNC.
Correct.
So Delta Plus, not an airline thing. Delta Plus. Have you not heard about Delta Plus? Maybe you haven't. You know the Delta variant of the virus. Now India tells us there's a Delta Plus. It's a variant of the variant in India.
And it's more contagious or more deadly?
No, they have not determined that it's worse in any way yet, but it's new. Just giving you a heads up.
Yeah.
But I got to say, I'm enjoying, here where I am, the pandemic is being treated more or less as it's over. Not quite, but things are feeling pretty free here.
I still feel I have to wear a mask when I go into a business.
And I
feel slightly guilty wearing a mask even walking outside.
You guilty wearing a mask or not wearing a mask?
Not wearing a mask, sorry.
Uh-huh.
Yes, so, no, things are, and people have sort of forgotten the pandemic, bizarrely, quite quickly.
Yeah.
Where did that year go? Oh, well.
There are these weird residues of it, though, like, this health club that I am now going to, it's not where I was swimming before the pandemic, but,
Right.
They still, a pandemic measure they instituted when they reopened probably a couple of months ago is like no towel service.
Right.
That doesn't really make sense, right? Surface transmission I thought was discounted pretty decisively some time ago, right?
Right, and you're going to have to dry off sometime, so I guess you have to bring your own towel now?
You bring your own towel, and it's true that, look, you can't catch it from yourself, so you bring your towel, you put it back in your backpack, there's no risk. It's just like, how much risk would there be if there were a bunch of towels there and you grabbed one?
Right, and then they
threw
washed
it in
them all,
a dispenser. That would be okay with me.
Yeah. Yes, there's probably going to be a lot of money saving going on for that reason.
Oh, this will change soon. People are too unhappy about it.
One thing I wonder if it'll change is you talk to a restaurant manager, which I did this past week, and he says in West Hollywood, which is the Boys Town area of Los Angeles, very gay, and it's a separate city, and he says he can't attract people to work at his restaurant even for $19 an hour. And he asks them, and they say, well, they're sick of restaurant work. They want to pursue new careers, different types of careers. And where are these new careers? And at what point do they realize that, if they can make a living at these new careers, great. That's a huge opening of society. But they couldn't make a living at them before. They wanted to be actors, and they've
still got unemployment insurance.
They need a day
meanwhile, hope springs eternal. They're getting the unemployment insurance.
When the unemployment insurance expires, are they going to come back to New York?
They're going to have a harsh reckoning.
Are there really sort of whole new careers that they could open up, that they could pursue, that they didn't realize existed before the pandemic? It's hard to believe. I mean, waitering at $19 an hour is a pretty good day job.
Not bad. Easy for me and you to say. Wait, being a waiter? Plus tips?
Yeah. Or maybe a dishwasher, but still,
okay,
$19 an hour is
washing
is
dishes
less.
Gets old. I don't know how much of it you've done, but there's
this restaurant has a super duper automatic dishwasher that does all the
Yeah,
work
well,
for you.
still, whatever you're doing, it would get old. Now, speaking of the pandemic, did you see that Bret Weinstein is flirting with vaccine trutherism?
No, I saw that Eric Weinstein thinks that after McAfee was somehow died, that they're after him next. They think he was assassinated.
Wait, they're after Eric? They're after who?
Eric thinks McAfee was assassinated and that he might be next.
That Eric might be next?
Yes, and I just saw this on Twitter right before we went on the air, so it could be libelous, but people were saying, "Oh, that's just Eric."
Well, I want to talk about the Weinsteins in the Parrot Room. I think it's time we had a good, long discussion about Bret and Eric, Mickey.
But I don't know them that well.
I know Bret a little, and I would like to have a good, long discussion about it. Now, I will say, Bret deleted his oddest tweet, but but he's still. And look, I don't want to totally dismiss his concerns. And by the way, some commenters on Twitter said that Eric is also making anti-vax noises, but I can't vouch for that. But Bret is expressing deep concern about the possible health hazards of vaccines.
Well, a lot of people are. I mean, they're saying A, that looks like you can get it even though you've been vaxxed, and B,
oh no, this isn't that. This is
side effects.
Yeah, I mean, here's the tweet he deleted. I'll just leave you with this. It says, for months I've asked roughly everyone, I mean, the approximate sign before everyone. For months I've asked almost everyone I talked to if they're vaccinated and what their experience was. Nearly all had scary symptoms, some terrifying. First of all, that's weird. I haven't heard of anyone who reported anything beyond what they said the predictable or possible side effects were.
Oh, I know people, and I had aches in my joints that are a little worse than I expected. I expected aches at the.
But are they gone?
No, they're still there. It's like it happened 5 days after I was vaxxed, so it could be disconnected.
Exactly.
But it's pain I hadn't felt before, and maybe it triggered the onset of arthritis or something. I don't know.
But see, I'm not saying that it wasn't worth taking the vaccine. I'm just saying that it's This is one
thing. It is
thing.
a side effect.
This is one thing that goes on is, if you think there may be these dramatic adverse effects, you're really focused in the week or so after, and you're paying a lot of attention to how your body's feeling, and you know how hypochondriacs are. I mean, you certainly know how hypochondriacs are, how sensitive they can be in imagining symptoms and stuff. And so I think you just have to discount a little.
Sure, but I'm not paying attention to it now, but I have pain now sitting here. I noticed on the last podcast, I was sort of moving around with Megan in a sort of disconcerting fashion.
This was in the Parrot Room. That was because of joint pain?
That's because I have a pain in my hip joint, yeah, and I'm trying to take pressure off it.
See, but you're right. It could be a coincidence.
It could be. It's entirely possible.
I would suspect it is. Anyway, the rest of his tweet was, after he says this, he says, nearly all had scary symptoms, some terrifying. He says, question, Q. So how could anyone doubt there was a huge adverse event signal? Whatever. And then he says, answer. Most aren't talking unless asked. That seems weird. Why wouldn't people talk? You're talking about it. Why would they not talk about it?
I brought it up with people and they say, oh, you're just an ideological right-winger. I said, no, I'm for the vaccine. I'm just reporting what happened to me. And so you get shit for that. Yeah.
So anyway, he deletes this. Let's talk about the Weinsteins in the Parrot Room.
It looks like Justice Breyer is not going to retire. And
how do we know that?
Well, I saw somebody say this was the conventional wisdom, and Josh Gerstein's piece in Politico on the recent court decisions gave a pretty good reason why not, which is Breyer is supposedly engineering these shifting coalitions on the new court, so then instead of the conservatives like writing the maximum conservative opinion on like Obamacare and religious discrimination, it came out with Justice Roberts winning with the sort of the conservative side still won, but it had no real preferential value. They said, oh, you have no standing to challenge Obamacare. It didn't say Obamacare would be unconstitutional if you did have standing. You just said you have no standing. And it said, oh, you just hate the Catholics. It's not a broad rule that you have to provide funding for, charities that won't perform abortion. There was like a pattern that you just hated the Catholics. So it's a specific case. And Breyer supposedly engineered this all. So he obviously thinks he's playing a constructive role. And it's true that it's hard to imagine a newbie import of like, the 35-year-old, left-wing black woman law professor that Biden wants to appoint immediately engineering all this vote trading and this politicking the way Breyer can. So he may rationally think he has at least another year of productive labor in the liberal vineyard before anybody should ask him to retire. Of course, then it might be too late.
He's got to go, man. So we've got to go. We've been at this more than an hour.
Okay.
Name things you were going to talk about. We can talk about them in the Parrot Room. By the way,
we're through all my non-Parrot Room topics.
Okay, so what are we going to talk? The Parrot Room, by the way, is at patreon.com/Parrot Room.
Did we talk about Lin-Manuel Miranda last time?
You mean the In the Heights?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's getting blowback from the left.
Right. Did we talk about that? I think we can
No,
talk
we
about
didn't.
that.
I don't think we did. I don't think we've talked about it at all. So
Did we talk about Hunter Biden? I have another visual aid.
I believe we talk about him every time you and I speak. I can't get enough of him.
There's an incident, Bob, you're not looking at your screen. There's an incident with a visual aid.
M&M's?
M&M's involving M&M's and Hunter Biden. And where did he put those M&M's, Bob?
Oh,
you don't
God,
know, do you?
I don't think I want to know.
It's almost your worst nightmare. We can talk about the movie Network. Yeah.
Hunter, I'm writing this down. Hunter, M&M's, where? Question mark. Network, why? Question mark. John McAfee. Wait, can we work John McAfee, who committed suicide in prison allegedly, into a grand unified theory with Jeffrey Epstein? Oh, speaking of grand unified theories, I want to talk about Einstein.
Okay.
I've been listening to the Walter Isaacson biography. I want to unveil my Wimbledon challenge, which is only for me. Nobody else has to participate in it. I didn't talk about the U.S. government taking down all these Iran-linked websites.
Yeah.
I have mentioned that.
I have a perverse theory about Ramesh Ponnuru ascending to the editorship of National Review.
Okay, Ramesh.
Don't leave it in the locker room. We could talk about the new Gossip Girl, white people wrestling with their privilege, Bob.
Haven't heard about that.
What could
white
be more exciting?
White people wrestling with privilege.
And that's all I got for them. But that's enough.
I think we mentioned last week. Yeah.
Nicole Hannah-Jones demanding tenure.
NHJT.
Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, that's plenty to talk about, I guess, and we'll find other things. I mean, I think I already talked about the fact that the guy who coined the term the fundamental attribution error had his obit in the New York Times. Finally, he died a month ago, but...
Oh, I have a point to make about that.
About that or about the piece I wrote about it in the Nonzero newsletter?
Well, both. I read that piece.
Okay.
And, but it relates to the Merrick Garland lawsuit, but we can talk about that in the Parrot Room.
Attribution error merit. Okay. MG. Okay, so that's a lot. So that's at patreon.com/Parrot Room, where people can go to support finer journalism.
And if you want this parrot to live, you'll subscribe to the Parrot Room.
Or if you want to pay for a new parrot after that one is executed. So rate and review The Wright Show. Smash the like button. Follow Mickey on Twitter accounts. Mickey, me, Robert Writer. Mickey's newsletter, Kausfiles. Mine, Nonzero. I don't know. What else is there to plug?
That's it. We had Megan Down on as our mystery guest
Oh,
last week.
yeah, we should unveil.
She was great.
Our mystery guest was Megan Down. She was great. She was just like one of the guys, Mickey.
Well, that was the idea. She can talk about anything. So,
quite so. And then there's her brand, Nuanced AF, the mug that Mickey is holding on.
Her blog, her podcast is called The Unspeakable Podcast. So, thank her for coming on.
Oh, that's another thing we could talk about is, some of this may have to wait for next week, but, some commenter, I think, nominated as the next Trump. And I think they wanted to see what you would think of this. You know, the guy who was Crystal Ball's co-host on what used to be The Rising, but now that they left The Hill is called something else.
Now it's like the number one rated podcast in America.
Yeah. His name is Sagar something.
Yeah, I can't pronounce it, which is a problem. But
anyway,
I haven't bothered to figure out how to pronounce it. But,
he is. Somebody thinks he is a Trumpist to your liking. So
I think he is.
I'm writing this down.
I think he is, but
also they interviewed Joe Rogan, and I listened to that, and maybe I'll talk about that.
It's worth subscribing to the Parrot Room just to see Megan's eye roll every time I bring up a subject. She basically rolls with all the punches, but before she rolls with the punches, she has a little eye dart. And don't think I didn't notice.
I thought I was doing the eye rolling.
No, which you're rolling, but she darts. She sort of says, "Oh my God, I have to respond to this" with her eyes, and then she responds.
I think you're misreading her.
It's hilarious.
I think if she did that, it would have been in response to me. There was a subtle 2-against-1 dynamic where you and Megan were on the same team. I don't know if you noticed that.
You're so paranoid. I didn't notice that.
I know you didn't because you're so
They're
busy
all
being
ganging up on me,
yourself.
Bob. Me. They're ganging up on me.
This is what I mean. Okay.
Okay.
So we will see people in the Parrot Room.
Great. See you there.
Okay.